sorry, we also not discussed. We also noted the fact that we would be appointing some members, and also especially the attorney, he proposed that the people who would have the potential to become members, that they would be qualified people like certified engineers, architects, and other professionals that have been in that line of working. So, of course, if you also promise that you would possibly bring us some list of people for us to consider.
We've identified 3 people so far. The building official is still looking. If you have any other names to proffer, then we can do it that way also. But we will have a list of names for you.
Okay. So next time we mention this item would be appointing people to it.
The next step would be to appoint people to the board. Yes, sir.
All right.
Tab F, proposed ordinance, first reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Finance at Article 3 entitled Procurement Code by amending Division 10 entitled Prohibition on Use of Expended Polystyrene. Is this a fancy way of saying plastic cups? To prohibit the use of single-use plastic beverage straws by city contractors and special event permittees in city facilities and on city property, providing for repeal, conflicts, severability, codification, and for an effective date.
All right, public hearing is now open. Public hearing is open on this item. F as in Frank.
Laura Hill, 13075 Griffin Boulevard. I just wanted to thank Ms. Keys for bringing this. I think as a waterway community, this is a great step, and I support it 100%, and a lot of cities are doing it, and thank you very much for bringing this to our city.
Howard Tonkin, 12600 Griffin Boulevard. This is really important for our city. This will bring us up to speed with what cities like North Miami Beach and Miami Beach are doing. It's the way forward to abandon the use of plastic straws. We can switch to other types of materials. There is a really chronic issue of pollution in our city and the amount of plastic that we're putting into the ocean. Shortly, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than there is fish. And 98% of the world's pollution in the ocean comes from rivers. And as a resident that lives on the river, I can tell you that we are sure contributing our share to that. So if we can't legislate to ban the use of straws, period, we could educate. So instead of legislating this, we can educate the residents to stop using straws, single-use plastic bags, and move away from plastic. This is also going to go towards the abandonment of the use of pesticides and herbicides as well, which is another main cause of pollution that we're contributing into the rivers. Thank you.
William Prevotel, 11950 North Bayshore Drive. I'm wholly for all measures that take into account our environment. I've seen this type of legislation proposed elsewhere, and quite frankly, I'm confused. I certainly appreciate getting some of the plastic off, but I happen to do the garbage for our building and see other people walking the streets, and I rarely ever see somebody using a plastic straw. What I do see are thousands of water bottles. Thousands of water bottles that get thrown out, that get used each day, and there's no addressing that. Some years back, I believe it was a public NPR or something, or one of the public stations that actually it was on TV, that reviewed. There was a person interviewing a laboratory person, white coat, the whole thing, going over all these different water bottles, all these different things. It went on for a half hour, an hour, whatever it might have been. He goes through the different qualities and different minerals and different characteristics. In the end, she goes, well, which one do you use? And the guy goes, I don't use any of these things. I take it from the municipal because that's where they're all coming from. If you want to filter it, you can filter it. But I think there should be a promotion in our city to just stop using water bottles, period. If you want to filter it, like a Brita filter or something like that, you're much better off. You want to reuse your bottle 100 times, people aren't doing that. So I hope that after the straws, we can go on to other things, particularly the water bottles, and making some awareness of that. Thank you.
Good evening, Annie Montgomery, 2082 Laurel Lane. I have a suggestion for our city. At all these city functions, when there's plastic bottles and plastic glasses, why don't we have recycling bins out there? I never see any. And that's a disgrace. So why don't we start there? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kevin Burns, 2065 Alameda Drive. Thank you, Councilwoman Keys, for putting this forward. And as the parent of a 17-year-old kid, I'll tell you right now, it's front and center with these kids. I go out to the restaurant with my daughter, and Papa, don't use that straw. Don't. No, thank you. No, thank you. We were recently traveling, and the whole city, citywide, was completely banned of plastic straws in another state. Shuckers on North Bay Village does not allow straws in their restaurant, and they make a very big prominent sign, Save the Bay, no straws. I've been educated about 10 billion straws are manufactured a year, and they're saying it's, you got to start somewhere. You start with the straws. We started with the polyurethane, those styrofoam containers, and next we might do the water bottles. So as a community, we're going to help lead, and it's local businesses are already starting to do it. So I appreciate the effort you all are putting forward on this, and I tell you, the kids, the younger kids, are well aware of this. They've got portable straws that they use, and restaurants adapt very quickly. They get away with the plastics, they do away with the plastic straws, and they go back to the old-fashioned, for those of us who are older, with the old paper straws that fall apart after a while, but they're biodegradable. So thank you all for supporting this item.
All right, public hearing is still open. I don't know if former councilman is coming to the mic or if he's just making his grand entrance. Okay, public hearing is now closed.
First, I'd like to thank our city attorney for getting this resolution drawn up so quickly. I wish I could do more. I wish we could tell all the businesses, I wish we could tell public stop with the plastic bags, the styrofoam. There are other cities, so I'm working forward with the attorney to maybe have a program in our city that is a volunteer program from our businesses and our restaurants, that they will get credit and volunteer to not use the styrofoam and the plastic straws. Last night for takeout, I got a styrofoam takeout container, and they asked if I wanted a plastic bag. I said, what, I need another plastic bag for the styrofoam? I think I'm going to start bringing Tupperware to the restaurants with me. I personally carry a cooler with me 24/7. I do not use my plastic bottles at home, so I hope that everybody will try to volunteer, get the businesses, stop accepting straws and whatever, and this is just the beginning, but I think it's about as much as we can do right now, so thank you.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilwoman Keys to approve tab F. That motion was seconded by Councilman Galvin. Mayor Smith Joseph, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilman Galvin,
Yes.
Councilwoman Keys,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bieneme,
Yes.
and Councilman Nazume.
Yes.
Okay, item passes with a 5-0 vote. Tab G, proposed ordinance, first reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending Chapter 5 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Building Standards and Regulations at Article 5, Construction Fees and Regulations, Section 5-36 of the North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Construction Site Maintenance, to add a requirement that there shall be no accumulation of debris around construction sites, repealing all ordinance in conflict, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing an effective date. That's tab G.
Okay. Public hearing is open.
Good evening, Judy Brown, 1100 Northwest 120 Terrace. I thank you for this, bringing this,
G.
Mr. Gavin. But one thing that I would like for, if this is going to be for contractors, I hope that this would apply to the city as well. Because oftentimes when the city is doing projects, they don't necessarily clean it like it should be. I've seen concrete left, debris left, so I'm hoping that if this is required of private contractors, it will also be required of city personnel as well. Thank you.
Okay, public hearing is now closed.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just make a quick synopsis and then ask the city attorney for his input. In District 1, we've seen an explosion in the last year or two of building of new homes, and parts of District 1 have very narrow roads where you can see one construction project on one side of the street and another directly across. As a result, there are a lot of nails, a lot of debris, causing a lot of people to get flat tires. Long story short, I'd like to see our city contractors do a better job of, on a continual basis, not just at the end of the project, but on a continual basis, cleaning up of what's happening. I agree with Ms. Brown. It should extend to the city's construction projects. So if there's any language we need to add at this time, please let me know and I'll offer that as a friendly amendment.
That wouldn't be required, because it's part of the ordinance. It would apply to any contractors in the city, whether it's employed by the city or privately.
The city.
What if it's Public Works doing it?
It would apply, yeah.
No.
I mean, the what it says is that any construction site must be maintained. So the language, when Councilman when Councilman Calvin spoke to me about this, we did the research, and it actually existed in the code, but the language in the ordinance only talked about maintaining the construction site itself. And the issues that were coming up were issues outside the construction site. In this case, nails, but it could be anything. It could be a dumpster where things are falling out of the dumpster. So now it not only requires that the contractor maintain the construction site, but areas around the construction site. So it doesn't matter who the contractor is.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, we
City
need
Attorney.
a motion.
Can I ask another question? So does this give us remedies if the debris is around the construction site? Now, first question, is there a remedy? So what is around, and is it strong? I mean, I think this is great. Thank you, Councilman Galvin. Is there remedies? Can code enforcement go out and use this ordinance now?
Yes, so this is in our code, so it can be enforced by code enforcement. The issue was before, there was nothing in the code that talked about outside the construction site. So this now gives this now provides the language that code enforcement can use to cite contractors who leave dirty sites outside of the construction site.
And with regard to construction fencing, at what point do you need it? It says it's for screening to secure the site, but is it not to make the site just really hideous to the neighbors? I mean, do you really want to look at a porta potty next door to you for a year? And we have a lot of those on, in the neighborhoods with no fence. And also you've got the dumpster. So we have in our ordinance that we have an ordinance, a dumpster is instead of cleaning the property every day, but the dumpsters are like, and I know they're supposed to be clean, and that's code enforcement that's gonna come knock on the door and say, empty your dumpster, but, construction fences, I don't think there's enough on some of the construction.
Yes, Steve Pizzell, building official
Thank
for
you.
the city through the manager. Right now, we're enforcing it that if it is what's called a detractive nuisance, basically if the site is open so that it's more of a thing to secure the property and keep people off of it. So if it's an enclosed project that's mainly being done inside the house, right now we're not requiring the fences.
What about porta potties being open? They're not locked at night, are they?
They can be. if you want to. And right now, as far as what's going on, if the sites are not clean, my inspectors have been told, stop work until the site is clean and no
Thank you.
inspections.
Great, thank you.
All right. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to approve tab G. The motion was seconded by Mayor Smith Joseph. Councilman Dezume, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Councilman Galvin?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keys?
Yes,
Vice Mayor Bieneme?
Yes.
Item passes with a 5-0 vote.
Thank you,
Tab
Councilman.
H. Tab I. Good looking out, good looking out. Tab I. Proposed ordinance, first reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending volume 1, goals, objectives, and policies of the city of North Miami 2016 comprehensive plan, more specifically, the future land use element thereof in accordance with the requirements of section 163.31843, Florida Statutes 2018, and chapter 29, article 3, division 11, section 3-1102A, and sections 3-1105 through 3-1110 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances by amending the future land use element at policy 1.183 to provide for residential use within the Northwest 7th Avenue Planned Corridor Development Overlay, PCD, as is permitted within other planned corridor development overlays, and to require a conditional use permit to allocate density bonus units in the PCD, providing for an initial hearing and subsequent transmittal of the proposed amendment to the reviewing agencies and/or any interested local government or governmental agency for review under the expedient state review process, providing for an adoption hearing and subsequent transmittal of the proposed amendment as may be amended to respond to comments from the reviewing agencies to the State Land Planning Agency for a determination of completeness, providing for repeal, conflicts, severability, correction of Scrivener's errors, and an effective date. That was tab I.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Tanya Wilson with the Community Planning and Development Department. The request before you is for a text amendment to the city's comprehensive plan. I'll walk you through the overview of the request that's being made tonight. Specifically at policy 1.18.3, currently within the PCD that runs along Northwest 7th Avenue on the west side of the city, no residential units are permitted within that district. So the request tonight is to allow for residential densities to be applied to that overlay district. The density that's being recommended is 125 dwelling units per acre. Staff is requesting that the process be the same as you're familiar with through the NRO, where a conditional use permit would be filed in the event a developer is seeking to develop along Northwest 7th Avenue. They would request bonus units come before City Council in the form of a resolution, and the City Council would make a determination as to whether or not those units would be allocated. This request is being brought as a result of the adoption of the Chinatown Master Plan. Council will recall back in 2017, this body adopted the Chinatown Master Plan, and within it were a series of recommendations, one of which was that residential uses should be considered as a permitted use within that district. So looking at the benefits, several developers that we've spoken to and also as highlighted in the feasibility study, it's highly believed that mixed use with residential is the highest and best use for that corridor. Currently, we allow for mixed use, but residential is not allowed. And we believe that we increase the propensity for redevelopment and activation of that district if residential is now considered as a permitted use. Looking at the feasibility study, we know that there are several economic benefits that were highlighted. There's also the recommendation that with increasing residential densities there, it increases the options for housing. Currently, if you look at the city's zoning map, there's no multifamily uses that are permitted on the map that are west of North Miami Avenue. Everything on the west side of the city pretty much is single family, low density residential. So as a city that's promoting workforce housing and affordable housing, certainly it's one of the tools in our box that we should increase housing options by allowing for multifamily development where currently is prohibited in certain sectors of the city. Also looking at consistency with the comprehensive plan again, because several areas of the comprehensive plan require that these allocations be approved by conditional use permit, we're requesting that as a part of this request, if residential density is approved, that the mechanism that allows for that will be through a conditional use permit. And again, going back to the feasibility study, there is definitive and concrete evidence that allowing for mixed-use residential within that district, we see that there's a high demand for hotel uses on the west side, there's a high demand for retail, for office, there's also a high demand for these three types of uses to have the complement of residential. It will only happen, and it would only happen successfully if we open up the market to this additional fourth type of use. In terms of the mechanism, because it is a comprehensive plan text amendment, we know that there's a state requirement that it be transmitted to DEO. Once it's transmitted to DEO, they have 30 days in which to weigh in and give a recommendation on the city's text amendment. Then DEO return that to the city. We have 6 months. If there are any changes that DEO recommends to the city, we have within 6 months to effectuate those changes. Once we've responded to any of DEO's comments or recommendations or objections, then it takes effect after second reading within 31 days. So we have a process that's state-related, then it comes back to the city for second reading.
All right.
And that concludes staff's presentation on the comprehensive plan text amendment.
Thank you. We'll open it to the public for any question or concerns. If not, we'll, I see two coming.
Jim Garrett, 11610 North Bay Shore Drive, representing Minnie Sue Hendricks at 645 Northwest 132nd Street, my mother. This will be great for her. She has lived in this district with a couple other residents. This rezoning will accomplish two goals. It will help the people in that district sell houses that they haven't been able to sell over the last 30 years. And number two, will help the city gain its goal of revitalizing this business district. This is right, what Mrs. Wilson said. If you look up Dania Beach up on US 1, when they changed their zone, they attracted 4 hotels.
You can go to the other mic, Ms. Hatch.
They attracted 4 hotels. They attracted 4 hotels in their district between Stirling Road up to Griffin Road. So this will be a positive impact for the city. Thank you.
Jessica Alston, 1140 Northwest 125 Street, Sunkist Grove. I'm very concerned about this. First of all, the writing of this item has no consideration for the non-professional. No consideration for the understanding by a non-professional like me. But I object to high-density planning along the 7th Avenue corridor. In my view, it's planning for slum and ghetto development. And of that, I'm greatly opposed. Opposed to the planning of additional hotel on 7th Avenue and this high-density multi-family housing would breed nothing but low-class living. Thank you.
William Prevotel, 11950 North Bay Shore Drive. I'd like to speak in favor of this item, and I do hope that, in light of the concerns just expressed, that it not become, I think the word was ghetto. I believe that by having the additional density, by having a reasonable height, 200 feet and or more, will allow someone to redevelop properly. It was just a few years ago that across the city, basically, just as a rule of thumb, you could pass by a project that was nearly falling down, and you could not replace that number of units at that property. Having pushed it, luckily that's been adopted by us. But the real message is you need to do more than what exists in order to get a quality project for someone to make an investment. I also applaud the fact that it's mixed use. By having it mixed use, this is going to make it more neighborhood friendly. It'll take cars off the street. It'll make it more convenient for the people who are there. And I hope also economically more incentive, and it'll balance out with the community. I think this will, in the end, lead for a safer neighborhood as well, something more desirable. And I fully applaud this measure, and I hope that we can then stay on top of the developers so that when the projects, whatever, I don't mean to use the word projects, when the buildings, when it's built out, that it is of quality construction with quality character. Thank you.
Judy Brown, Northwest 127th Avenue, 1100. I understand this proposal as it's written. What I understand is that it's sort of bringing us up to where all the rest of the city is. 7th Avenue, we can't continue. We need to move forward. I understand that some people don't see eye to eye, but we need housing. We need, and you have to have a sort of like a mixed use of this particular area on 7th Avenue in order for us to try to move forward. 7th Avenue has nothing there now, nothing at all. Our community, there's not a nice restaurants, there are no hotels. You know, I come to Biscayne sometime 3 or 4 times a day. I would like for us to have something on over in Sunkist Grove. And this is a part of the master plan. I do understand what's going on. And I think that it is a step in the right direction. I really do. So I would like for, I would like to continue to move. And whenever there is construction or whenever there's a proposed plan, that will be brought to the residents over in Sunkist Grove. And we will have a chance at that particular time to voice our opinion on it as to whether or not, you know, is it good for the area, whatever. So I'm for this. Thank you.
Howard Tonkin, 12600 Griffin Boulevard. There's 5,000 people a week move to Florida, or South Florida, I believe it is. We're going to have an increase of 6 million people over the next 10 years in Florida. We can either keep building into the Everglades with these single-family homes, or we can go up. And all I can say with the most urgent message possible is that we talk about being storm ready. If you could see how many thousands of residents in this city live at and below sea level now, and all I ever hear in this city is no high density, height limits, don't let people build up. If you could see what's coming, you would get these people out of these neighborhoods that are doomed and create green space to take the water mitigation, to take the storm surge, to do something with the water, and you would get people that have no idea what's coming out of these areas and into high rises, not whatever the word was about low income or whatever. There can be nice developments. Things can happen proactively in our city to turn our city into a nice habitable place in the future. But if we keep with the same single family homes, no high rise, no high density living, we're going to have tens of thousands of people that are just going to lose their homes in a really horrible way. So it's really time to reevaluate where we're moving forward as a city. And the 7th Avenue, proximity to Golden Glades, 441 is a secondary road to I-95 to downtown. It is the perfect location to do high density. I would go high rise. I would build skyscrapers to Golden Glades. That's why there's so much traffic, because people are trying to get everywhere. If you're close to Golden Glades there on 441, this is the perfect area to do high rise because it will alleviate traffic. And then in the future, perhaps we can have some kind of elevated rail or monorail to downtown and actually have a thriving, vibrant city that is sustainable through the rising sea level and climate change. But in areas of our city, like north of 135th and east of the Griffin Memorial Highway area, those neighborhoods are doomed. We've got to get those people out of there. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Kevin Burns, 2065 Alameda Drive. I'd like to thank Councilman Alex for bringing this back up. It is your district, and I support it wholeheartedly. Regardless if Chinatown is ever completed or not, you need quality housing opportunities for the people who want to live in that area. It's in the Chinatown overlay, but again, whether Chinatown comes or not, let's allow developers and individuals to build and redo 7th Avenue. And as Howard was just saying, that Burger King that's on 7th Avenue is the second busiest Burger King south of Atlanta. That Polo Tropical that we had to beg people to come and build, it's one of the most highest grossing stores that they have. 7th Avenue is hot. 7th Avenue is going places. People want to live close to there, and we should give the people the opportunity to be able to live in a respectable, beautiful, new high-rise building over there. And again, as Judy said, when the developer comes and wants to build a new project, it's going to come before the Planning Commission and to the residents so they can get on board with it. But let's have that opportunity to do it, and I think we'll do very well with it. Thank you very much, and please support this item.
Mayor, council, city manager, clerk, city attorney, the policeman, for everybody. Think I get everybody. I'm making a joke out with it on something very serious. Jacques Despinos, 95 Nordius, 131 Street. It's about time you guys thinking about doing something on 7th Avenue. When I was sitting there with some of you, there was some discussion about it. Trying to have one city. When you go in the east by Biscayne, then you went to 7th Avenue, it seemed like you were in two different cities. When I was there was the complaint. Remember? Now Commissioner Kawakis, at that time was Kawakis, right? We were working very hard about it. In fact, we come east side on 6th Avenue to see if something can be done with some building absentee landlord looked like prison. I was pushing one day to Tony Kraft when he was here to do something with the building. I saw. I don't want to put my finger in it now. I don't want to be sued. But every day we go and pick up trash in the morning to clean it. Your guy who live here know what I'm talking about. But now it's long overdue to do something on 7th Avenue. We were talking to do something on the west side of 7th Avenue. Do some high riser and put part of 7th Avenue, the west side, part of North Miami. I will appreciate anything can be done to help out. Please.
Thank you.
Give a push to 7th Avenue. They need it.
All right. Thank you very much. I see no one coming, so public hearing is closed on the item. Members of the dais.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item, this is one of those things, Judy, you could appreciate this as an educator. I wasn't on board with it because I'm involving learning as much as I can as I'm on here. And the administration and the professional Tanya department, and they actually started telling me about the importance of housing. And I know there's a crisis in our community because I see it every day. We have residents right now who live in cars, and I have to work with Marie trying to get them housing. It's unfortunate, but it's real. And three of them, one of them is one of my residents. So it's something that we're dealing with real. And it took me a little while for me to come around to understand that we need to do something. All this is doing, so that folks will know what this resolution is asking, is just to include housing, workforce, affordable housing. And a good friend of mine, who's a radio announcer, it's so funny, we mentioned this item came tonight because I did not know that our commissioner was coming. He took me out one day and sat down with me and said, we need to have something on 7th Avenue because there's nowhere to build in this city. And your district is all residential, which is true. I have 2 buildings in my district. And when he said that to me, he said, we got to do something. And I know that you don't want any type of development, and that's what this is about, because this will come back to the different boards and to the city council. The residents will have, we're not going to take any crappy building or just any, whatever that word, I don't even want to use it, or entertain it. That was said before. But it's important that we understand, I've lived in that area for over 22 years. And the only new building that went up is a storage building on 133rd Street, right by 95. And the other one that went up is a Pollo Tropical that we kind of helped out. That's it. In the last 20 years, we don't even have a supermarket, a name brand supermarket.
Well, you have a Family Dollar.
No, we have a lot of Family Dollars. We have 2, maybe 3. Double Tree. There's a couple of them. So it's painful. New Way, that's what I'm saying, the mom and pop. We have a mom and pop supermarket, and it's sad. It's 2019. So if we need to go shopping, we got to go outside to either Winn-Dixie or both side of outside our city limit, or we come on the east side. So to your district, if you will, to Carroll's district. So it's the vision for 7th Avenue is there, and I'm passionate about it, and it has nothing to do with politics because it is what it is. I will not leave this commission the same way I got it, and on 7th Avenue the same way I got it 4 years ago, and that's part of that. But it took me a while to get there, and you know it says in politics. You know, it takes a person to say when they were wrong, but I was totally opposed to it because I did not understand it. And it took the administration, Mr. Manager, constantly talking to me about it, and then Tanya, and then Mr. Rothschild Anderson called me and say he's an advocate of it, and that's when I suggest to him, let's meet with the commissioner, because I know there was some stuff that I was talking about, because we were talking about some other projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are good stuff coming, and you are going to know what's the vision for 7th Avenue. And Mr. Burns, it's coming. Good stuff are going to happen, and for the support of everyone in this city, I must say. It hasn't been a West Side things when people talked about. We do have a lot of folks from everywhere who wants to see a stronger 7th Avenue where all of us, because guess what? When you uplift one area of the city, you uplift everybody. And we are, and we're on the map, and I want to say thank you to my colleagues because they have been part of that vision, Mr. Mayor, your vision of a city, what is it, City on the Move.
City on the Move.
So we've been moving, and we're going to continue going forward and stuff. So thank you, Ms. Brown. It took me a while. Mr. Manager, thank you, Tanya, and Mr. Anderson. If you're watching this, thank you for getting me here to understand housing is an important issue for me to get here. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman.
Just briefly, I want to thank Councilman DeSulmi for allowing this residential. We changed the comprehensive plan in 2015, but we did not allow for the residential. And we gave it the height, but there's really nobody who's just going to be building office buildings. So it is just an ideal place for movement, for transit. You're right on I-95, so it's fabulous. Question to Ms. Wilson really quickly. If someone wanted to build just a residential project or 2-use, we have a 3-use requirement for multifamily. We've had to modify that for a couple other projects like over in Councilman Galvin's because you're not really on a corridor where it's going to lend itself to commercial. So do we have to tweak that going forward? And also, if we had a hotel there, is a hotel allowed now, or will that be allowed?
It's one of the permitted uses currently.
Okay, so just a hotel.
Correct.
But what about residential? Do we need to tweak that for the uses?
So, if approved, it will allow for that residential component as a part of your 3 mixed uses.
But what
So
if you don't
currently,
have the
no.
other 2 mixed uses? Or-
You're required to have in order for it to constitute as mixed use. Otherwise, it would just be straight multifamily.
And
To
that's
be
not-
mixed use, you would need to have the component of either office, retail, residential, a combination.
What we modified before was the amount of retail that was required on the ground floor. That would only be for when it's built on a
Major
commercial corridor.
So this is not on a.
Well, actually, this is on the commercial corridor.
So what if someone, you've got like a block, and what if someone doesn't buy the whole block so it doesn't sit on 7th Avenue, but it sits up along that Northwest 6 along the highway? That's my concern. If they don't take the whole block from that, like, I hate to call it perimeter road, that little road that nobody uses, and it goes all the way to 7th, you're not gonna have the corridor. That's where my concern is that.
So I think your question in terms of the previous text amendment, the manager is right. That was related to the types of uses that you have on the ground floor. So the code, the way it reads now, is the ground floor has to be primarily retail if it's on a major corridor. If it's on 125th or it's on 7th. If it's on a local road that's not a major area that you have high pedestrian traffic, then they're allowed to have residential on the ground floor.
Okay, so we've already taken care of that.
We did, yeah. So it's
Okay.
really activation of the ground floor is what you're
Thank
looking
you.
for.
Just a quick question. It's on east of 7, right?
Yes,
Okay. And this area is on the opportunity zone map?
it is.
Okay.
It is. It's in the opportunity.
Portion
district,
A portion.
7th Avenue.
Is that the whole thing? The opportunity
From
It's
zone?
the northern, it's the northern
It
portion.
covers a
The
portion
northern?
of Northwest 7th.
What do you
Avenue.
mean, the
Talking about-
northern?
So I think it's
135th
from
to
around
143rd?
130, I think it's at 135th
To
Yeah,
to
143rd?
the,
133.
to the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, 135th to the city limits.
Okay, for 143rd.
Wait, so, oh, really?
The opportunity
The
zone.
opportunity
So
zone.
it skipped 125th?
No. So the opportunity zones are the these new qualifying zones
Yes.
for the tax incentive
Yeah.
under the Trump tax plan. They selected 3 in the city.
Yes, I know.
So one of them is on 7th Avenue, but the one that
That's what I'm saying.
the census tract that they selected
Mm.
is the northern portion of 7th
Ew.
Avenue within the city. So, no,
Yeah.
it's still
It's still the city.
it's still
So
the
it
city.
starts on 135th?
On 135th.
By, by that gas
143rd.
station to 143rd?
and goes
Yeah.
north.
It's a
So
little
what
like
about
one-
down
The car
south?
wash.
It doesn't include
No,
that?
Does not
that's-
include
that's the-
Who do we need to talk to? Trump?
No, that's-
We ain't talking to him. We're not
that's
talking
another
to him.
thing. That's
Right.
Okay.
state and state
Yeah,
action.
it goes
the
it goes
governor
to the
who-
state. The state makes the recommendation and the treasury
Yeah.
makes the
But one
final
of the
decision.
reasons is the big
Yeah.
golden.
So what size,
Golden Glade
what
project
project
coming.
size are considered in this opportunity zone?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Any size,
any size.
any
Yeah, any
project?
size.
Any size. It,
Oh.
it doesn't have to be residential. It
Is
can be
Russia
commercial. It can be a lot of things.
Sometimes the amount of money that
I
you're gonna
see.
make, that's
That's yeah.
make
Okay,
sense.
we
yeah.
got you.
Thank you, Madam Director. Did we open?
You closed it.
Oh, we closed. Okay. Any other comment? No. All right.
to
We need a
approve?
motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second,
I have a motion made by Councilwoman Keys to approve tab I. That motion was seconded by Councilman Desulme. Or, Councilwoman Keys, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bien-Aimé, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilman Desulme, how do you vote?
yes.
Mayor Joseph, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Councilman Galvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Item passes 5-0. Tab H, proposed ordinance, first reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, providing for text amendments to chapter 29 of the city of North Miami Code of Ordinances by amending Article 3, Division 4, entitled Conditional Uses, specifically at Section 3-401, entitled Purpose and Applicability, and at Article 3, Division 13, entitled Development Agreements, specifically at Section 3-1301, entitled Purpose and Applicability. Further, amending Article 4, Division 3, entitled Special Purpose and Overlay Districts, specifically at Section 4-306, entitled Planned Corridor Overlay District PCD, to establish residential density in the State Road 7 Northwest 7th Avenue PCD, and require a conditional use permit for development within the PCD, providing for repeal, conflicts, severability, correction of scrivener's errors, codification, and for an effective date.
Same
So
thing?
this item is actually a companion item. It's not a duplication. So the one that you approved before was for the comprehensive plan. This item is a request for the text amendment to the land development regulations. So it would allow for consistency between the two documents. It's the same district, same area. You're just now doing it for the land development regulations.
Okay. Public hearing is now open. See none, hear none. Public hearing is closed. It's a tax amendment. Should be good for everyone, right? I hope.
Northwest 125 Street, Sunkist Grove. Again, there's no effort made in your writing. There's this tab so that non-professional can clearly understand what it means. I'm firmly against the high residency density of 7th Avenue. This high density will contribute to making 7th Avenue a slum and a ghetto. They have a name for a place where there are single-family homes. It's called a suburb. We in Cambria, we in Sunkist Grove, we are a suburb of the city of North Miami and a suburb of Miami. That's part of our charm. And I want to see that maintained. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is now closed on the item. Mr. Councilman? There is nothing to say? No? Well, we need a motion?
Second.
I have a motion made by Councilman Desormeaux to approve tab H. That motion was seconded by Councilman Galvin. Councilman Galvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bien-Aimé, how do you vote?
Please step up for a second.
Councilman Desormeaux, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Joseph, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Keys, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bien-Aimé, how do you vote on tab H?
Yes.
Item passes 5-0. Tab J, proposed ordinance, first reading of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, providing for text amendment to chapter 29 of the city of North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Land Development Regulations by amending Article 4, Division 2, entitled Zoning Districts, specifically at Section 4-203, entitled Minimum Standards of Development, to include additional setbacks, restrict uses, increase buffering, and limiting building orientation and height requirements for certain M1 zone parcel, providing for repeal, conflicts, severability, correction of scrivener's errors, and for an effective date. Tab J.
Thank you. For the record again, Tanya Wilson with the Community Planning and Development Department.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
since I own a portion of this district, I'm going to recuse myself and leave the dais.
No, because you live in the district?
No, I own,
Oh,
I
okay.
own a couple lots of the,
Okay.
a large portion of the lot.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
But again, Mr. Attorney, if she doesn't, immediately benefit from any of this, is that really required?
Actually, in this
This is
case,
for the entire,
actually, in this case, she would.
oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's best that she recuse herself.
That's it? Oh, it's open to the public now, or now it's your
No, you
turn?
told me to stop.
Now, go ahead.
For the record, Tanya Wilson with the Community Planning and Development Department. This is a request for a text amendment to the city's land development regulations. This request is being sponsored by Councilman Galvin. It's to section 4-203 of the LDRs. Back in 2017, when the city updated the entire LDRs, a new industrial district was established along Northeast 13th Avenue, south of Northeast 124th Street. At that time, Councilman Galvin asked that staff go back and look at adequate buffering language to ensure where the two districts met between the industrial and the neighboring single-family neighborhood. There was adequate buffering language there to ensure that there was harmony between the two dissimilar uses. So staff went back, crafted recommended language, which we're proposing in the ordinance that's before you. So I'm going to walk you through some of the details that are provided within that proposed ordinance. So the area again is the M1 zone area that's south of Northeast 124th Street, between Northeast 12th Place and Northeast 13th Avenue. The staff is seeking to provide harmony within the code between the two dissimilar districts that neighbor primarily along Northeast 12th Place. So looking at the details of the ordinance itself, you'll see that there's new language being introduced in section 4-203 that limits certain uses. So specifically, there's prohibition for businesses, industrial businesses that do fabrication, manufacturing, assembling, or processing materials. The language that's being proffered says that anything that emits any type of smoke or gas or odor or dust or noise, vibrations, anything that is industrial in nature of that sort would be contained in an enclosed building. That's not in the code right now, and that language is being proffered to ensure that that's contained. Anything that would be a potential nuisance would be contained within an enclosed building. There's also language regarding fence type. So it's recommending that an 8-foot fence or wall be established along Northeast 12th Place to create that separation again between industrial and single-family uses. There's an increase in the setback in the rear yard. Currently in the code, if you're a single-family, the rear yard would have the setback of 15 feet. In this case, in the industrial district, 15 feet. In this case, it's recommended at 25, so it's even greater than what's in the code currently. Also, in terms of the orientation of the businesses, again, I mentioned that now the two uses abut each other. There's industrial on the east side, there's residential on the west side. So the recommendation is that none of the industrial businesses would be oriented towards, if you could think, looking westward, would not be oriented towards a single family. So the two fronts would be looking at each other. Instead, the orientation would have to look eastward for the industrial uses. So those would be facing towards the train tracks instead. There's also language in terms of the signage, that there be no commercial signage along Northeast 12th Place where there is a residential presence currently. The Planning Commission did review the ordinance itself, and their recommendations were in terms of the existing single family that's there now. They're saying if there's single family units that seek to continue as single family units, but they're within the industrial district, that they should not be subjected to some of the setback requirements of the 25 feet. They should be allowed to have the 15 feet that they currently have within the code. So they would be grandfathered in, essentially. In terms of the fence type also, they're recommending that there's a solid metal fence or a CBS masonry wall that's recommended along Northeast 12th Place. In terms of the Planning Commission's recommendations, those were unanimously proffered, and they're seeking for City Council concurrence with their recommendations at this time. In terms of the item, of course, this is only first reading. We're bringing that before City Council for your consideration. This is staff's effort, again, to create harmony between the two districts, to include additional buffering language. If City Council has any questions at this time, staff is available to answer.
Yeah, we'll open it to the public first. Public hearing is now open on the item. Item J, as in Jack. See none, hear none. Public hearing is therefore closed. Jesus. Y'all know it was coming.
Well, they're ready to come up. William Prevotel, 11950 North Bay Shore Drive. I'm in favor of any gesture that can be made to make some consideration of the residential neighborhood in this little enclave. I think they seem to be good measures. I'm glad the Community Planning and Development have fostered these initiatives, and I hope they help to somehow keep the residents of that neighborhood a little bit more satisfied with their immediate community. Thank you.
All right.
My name's Giovanni Lobo. I'm a property owner at 12300 Northeast 13th Avenue. I'm seeing all these restrictions, and I see all these things that they're putting up on our properties, basically taking away our rights. One of the couple of things I see here is the train itself does earth vibrations and noise, and now they're going to give us a restriction that's already existing, like doesn't exist. So why are they going to give it to us if we live next to an M1 industrial district? So I don't think we should get that done to us. I want to keep my property. I'm going to live there, but I don't want to get my rights taken away if we've been changed to M1 industrial. Thank you.
Howard Tonkin, 12600 Griffin Boulevard, also owner of Urban Habitat 12304 Northeast 13th Avenue. So I vividly remember Dr. Medina coming into my nursery and shoving his finger in my face and telling me that I had to build a fence there, that there had to be a fence. And I was like, no, but this can be something so nice for the neighborhood and the community, and I'm sorry it's not a park, but it's a nursery, and it's pretty close to a park, and it's butterflies and birds, and it's endangered species, and it can be something really nice for the neighborhood. No, you're going to build the wall. Okay, let's build the wall. So then my landlord went to tremendous expense to build the wall, and then this guy turned around and sued my landlord for building the wall. And then now we want the wall. So I'm just wanting to get some clarity on where we are with the wall. Then we had the planning commission meeting, and then we were back to this language about industrial uses and outside of a building and so on. So it can be construed or manipulated or interpreted as I have an industrial business that's occurring outdoors, as it's a nursery. We don't just vibrate earth, we put it in pots, shift it, move it. We do all sorts of things with the earth. This also says no lighting, so there's no lighting? Can we have no lighting? It's like, then we changed that language so it wouldn't preclude my nursery, but then now there's language in here that's taking away people's property value. This gentleman that just spoke is going to lose so much of his property value because we're taking away his height, we're adding to the setback, and then it's also saying that if there's an industry occurring, that then the fence has to be replaced by a masonry fence. So we had that meeting, then we had the community meeting where there was all kinds of amazing requests made, and the next day at my nursery, the very expensive fence gate had been smashed. The very next day after that meeting, the nursery had been smashed, and there was all this voodoo outside the gate. Right? I could go on and on about that, but I must respect the 2 minutes. But as a business owner, I can really empathize with developers and business owners in this city about the really curious things that go on in this city.
All right.
Hello, my name is Marisol Medina. I live at 1270 Northeast 124th Street. I think that the improvements were nice. The height restrictions, I understand, the signage, the enforcement that we're putting in so that if crazy things do come there, we don't have to worry about them, like spot masters or heavy paints and heavy things that make it hard for you to breathe and be outside in your house. And I'm grateful for the amendments and the collaboration that occurred. And I'm sorry that that happened to his business. It sucks when people throw chickens and stuff and all that in your house. Seen it a lot in our neighborhood. Other concerns were, operating hours and construction that occurs. Currently we had the restrictions that, they can only operate during the business hours when it comes to construction. I hope that that continues to apply in the zones when it comes to holidays and weekends. That's it. I'm gonna stick with that. I'm grateful. Thank you guys.
Good evening. My name is Alina Medina. I live at 1270 Northeast, 124th Street. Thank you, Mr. Galvin, for bringing us up when you did a couple of years ago. And thank you for the planning group for doing such a good job. I really am very thankful to have these amendments done to protect the lives and the quality of life of those that live there. It's just, we can live together with businesses. There's nothing against the nursery at all. Actually, we welcome the nursery coming there. It's just a matter of protecting us and being able to sit in our living room with no fumes, no noise, so that really makes our day. So thank you very much.
My name is Paul Swanson. I'm a resident of 12340 Northeast 12th Place, literally touching right across from this property. And I just basically say thank you. They really went out of their way to listen to the residents' concerns, and I just want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Thank you. Members of the council, this is your time to speak.
Sure, I'll be quick, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
My motivation for bringing this forward is because I heard from so many residents in that immediate vicinity who wanted to see these types of change. I don't have a horse in that fight or whatever they say, but normally I would defer a question like that to the District 2 council person. Since she has a conflict, I then move the legislation myself for consideration by the council. but it comes directly from the suggestions of the nearby property owners.
Any comment? Any other
Yes,
question?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Joe, is this type of requirement, is it being done anywhere else where we have M1 industrial district in the city?
There are restrictions in the M1 district elsewhere, not specific to this type of language buffering. For instance, we've had minimum lot size, we've had transition zones, so it's not
Yeah.
unusual to have restrictions within this type of district.
No, I know, and I want to be in favor of this, but I don't want it to be where it's specifically limited to one area because of.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya, but I don't think there's another place in the city where you have M1 adjacent to R1 zoning. That's why this is unique.
M1 adjacent to a residential, you're
Yeah,
saying?
single family. There's
No,
there's
there is a
other-
M1, well, in my area, is a building does not consider living?
No,
It's just
no,
house
there's
we
no-
talking about?
It's,
That is
you're,
correct.
it's the difference, the commercial versus the industrial.
So it's commercial versus the industrial. So the homes that he's talking about, his property, those are not residential, they
That
are
is
commercial?
residential, that's where you
So on the street,
Uh-huh.
the 13th Avenue,
Yes,
to the east is an industrial area.
yes,
To the west,
west,
is a residential area.
yes.
But that block, you have the block itself where these properties are. The tip of the northern end of the block is commercial. The rest of it is industrial. However, the uses that are currently there
Yes.
are residential homes.
Yes.
Right now.
Got it.
But if a person buys one of those properties tomorrow,
Mhm.
they can do a auto body shop or whatever those industrial uses are. What the buffer is doing is on the west side or the back side, it'll create a buffer. They'll be
Yeah,
required to put a
because-
wall or something.
They don't say wall, because I'm not voting on the wall tonight. Okay.
Landscaping
Okay.
and
Fence.
setbacks,
Fence,
fence.
fence.
Well, it is a wall too. Metal wall, a metal fence, or it could be a wall, depending on what the use is. No, it has to be a metal fence, a metal solid
A
fence.
metal fence. So
That's
where-
that's
If it's
behind the
commercial.
storage, behind the storage facility.
Uh,
No,
that's too far.
across.
no,
across the street,
across
on the other side of the
So
street.
Yeah, the
east,
same street.
okay.
The same street as
Same street,
Spotmaster.
just on the other side of the street.
But
Same
wait,
street as Spotmasters.
Councilman
Oh,
Galvin.
same street, okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
No.
But I think Councilman Galvin has something similar on 18th Avenue, no? They're
No,
across the
'cause
street?
His
Because you got residential on that
they
side? Oh,
they share a,
A
the
street?
difference is they share. Well, actually, in
His
your
is the
area,
same
it's another
thing.
city.
Right, it's unincorporated.
It's unincorporated, so it's not our city.
okay.
That-
So
that boundary.
what's his name, Mr. Ross? Where those people wanted to rent to put their car, what the car dealership
Audi,
place?
Audi.
That's not ours?
Yes, that is.
That's what I'm
But the-
saying.
But the area.
Oh, across from
is
it, those
not-
houses are not?
No.
They did it.
Unincorporated
Oh,
area.
okay. I
Unincorporated.
did not know that part. Okay. All right. My other, I don't have particular concern or a dog in the fight. I just don't want, because we got to be careful. We are talking about folks' property, but we heard one person who said their property value may go up. May go down. Yeah, if it was going up, it'll be good. My concern is the word wall, the concrete. That's a wall. Yeah, the metal is fine, but it's just the concrete. That's the.
Let me try to lay
That's
your.
a
let me-
CBS,
let-
CBS concrete, yeah,
Yes,
concrete
I know.
wall.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Let me lay your concern right now. Behind Spotmasters, there is a wall.
Yeah, exactly.
All
That's fine.
all we're talking about is you would, if it's industrial use, you would just continue a wall
Oh, okay. On which side? That's what
on
I'm
the
confused.
12th place.
12 going, 12 place
Going south.
Okay.
Going south.
Going south. So behind the people's house.
Or
in front.
in front of their house.
That's right. So if you have the street there, and in the back, that's what I thought. So in the back of their house.
Yes, in the back of their
Oh,
property.
okay, that's what I'm on that street behind
The
Spotmaster
13, is it 13th Avenue
It's
or
13th.
13th Court?
Avenue. It's
Yeah.
behind. Okay.
like people living on that street, they're okay with the way it is. It's people in the back
To the west.
that will not change the people of front property. Is it correct? If I understand.
If I were to characterize it, would be the residential homeowners to the west of the block.
On 12th place.
On 12th Place.
Correct.
With their houses
Yeah,
are
in the back.
facing, with
Yeah.
their houses facing
In the
east.
back.
Oh, okay.
What is the
If
step
IT
back
could
right
show the
now
diagram,
behind those single family home?
What's the step back, Tanya? It's 15
Right
feet.
now,
For the backyard, it's 15 feet. For the rear yard, for the
they will not be affected by this.
They're grandfathered in, but it comes
In
into
case
play if they knock
someone
it down
else
and try to
comes in.
rebuild it. Then the planning commission's recommendation was let them stay at that 15. Don't burden them with going to 25 if they're going to remain as a house.
So they want to change the use from housing
No,
to.
the step back, they want to do it to
rear
25
yard
feet
setback.
instead of 15, the way it is right now.
So they want to
Okay.
create a store,
And,
a commercial, the same thing?
It's
I
25.
just-
25.
25 will
okay.
kick in.
How is gonna affect the transit station?
Well,
May-
the overlay district, based on the master plan, would cover a portion of 13th Avenue, but it wouldn't touch 12th Place. So it's shy one
No, I'm not
street.
talking about in the back. I'm talking
Yeah.
about
It would
30.
cover a portion of, a
Yeah.
portion of 13.
No, I'm
We're
talking
talking
about that,
right now-
the new
right now-
legislation in what.
Let me
Mhm.
make this statement. Right now, we're talking theoretical in the master plan, because we still have to bring all of that
Correct.
legislation back to you to decide exactly where the boundary will be. In theory, from the master plan, it will end at 13th, at 13th Avenue.
Including those.
Including that side,
Sportmaster
including that
and
side,
those
yes.
single family homes, right?
Yeah,
The
whatever's there,
nursery,
whatever is existing
those-
there now,
those section.
yes.
Okay. In what capacity is gonna affect? Oh, that's when it's gonna come back.
Back to
for-
you
we
to
have to
decide
do a map
what the
amendment.
buffer is, what the density, the height,
The
you know,
boundaries.
the boundary, everything.
You have to approve it.
Okay, why we have to change the
need to
step
vote.
back from 15 to 25?
So the idea was within the buffering to create even greater separation between the two dissimilar uses. So if the 15 was closer for industrial to residential, the idea is that the 25 would push you even further apart to create even more space between the two.
So,
Because right now I see a lot of landscaping in the back
In the rear.
at 15 feet.
So it's for the council's consideration. That was-
yeah, it's kind of, it's the
Proper.
concrete part that I'm having a little hard time with. So what can we do with that?
So there's still a 5 feet landscaping requirement. So quite honestly, Councilman, you won't see it unless you're really looking for it. If it's lushly landscaped, then it's not as hard, the presence of that wall. So it's not just a naked wall, it's covered by landscaping.
We need a motion.
I was waiting to see if there were any. I'll make the motion, assuming there's no further discussion.
I have a second.
Without a second, it dies
Well,
for.
I'll second it.
I have a motion made by Councilman Galvin to approve tab J. That motion was seconded by Mayor Joseph. Councilman Galvin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bien-Aimé, how do you vote?
No.
Councilman Desume, how do you vote?
This, no.
Mayor Joseph, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Motion died.
Motion fails 2 to
The
2.
motion dies.
Item fell 2-2.
The motion that fell in the item.
Item.
Yeah.
Tab K. Discussion regarding Reflections Funeral Home application for special exception permit.
Mayor and vice mayor are both off the dais. Everybody gets a raise. Move to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Can you read tab? What is this?
I take that back. The vice
Tab
mayor's
K.
right there. I forgot.
Yes.
Um,
Can you give me a quick overview, Mr.
Yes.
Attorney, about the item? The
Okay,
discussion
sir.
wise
May I?
before us?
So what's before you, well, this is a discussion item. The attorney for the applicant for a special exception permit, there was an application, it went to the Board of Adjustment, and Board of Adjustment denied it. They were required, I believe they filed their appeal on time, but now there's a request. Well, I'd rather he tell you the request.
I'll be very brief if I may.
No, but yes, sir. Give me a second, but you sponsor the item to be on the agenda. That's when you got to give us why is in there. This is the first time
This is
I see
this
that.
is a request from an attorney who's representing an applicant from the Board of Adjustment who's asking to come before you to have a discussion item. That's what I'm sponsoring.
Okay. That's the first time I see that happen.
Well, I mean, as I said last time, there is a procedure. The procedure is, if you go to Board of Adjustment, your item fails, you can appeal to the council as the zoning appeals board, or the applicant can go back and reapply, which is what myself and the attorney spoke about. But he still insisted that he wanted to come in and seek some relief from you. We
As
had
by
another
code,
discussion.
he should be allowed to be heard.
It's up to you if you want to.
We'll be
but
very
you
brief.
put it on the agenda. That's when you
I put
okay
it on
with
the
that.
agenda because it's an attorney who's asking that he wants to come speak to the board. If he
Okay.
didn't, if we didn't put him on the agenda, he could still come during public comment and still make the
Okay,
same
okay.
request.
That's
So
what I
just,
would- that-
as a
that's what
courtesy,
I
we
would-
put it on the agenda.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Councilman, thank you. I'm Frank Woland, and with me this evening are Mr. Joseph Pierre and his daughter Inel Simon, and they are here for Reflections Funeral Home. Frankly, our issue has been resolved by the city attorney and the deputy city attorney and staff and planning staff. We were going to ask the council to remand this back to the Board of Adjustment. We have been able to establish a workable procedure so that we can reapply. Our situation is one which was really one of where the issue became one of parking. We have made a parking agreement with a neighbor, with the Shalom Community Church, and because the circumstances have changed, and now there will be available off-site parking, we will resubmit our request to the Board of Adjustment, and we thank you for listening to us. And again, I have nothing but praise for the city attorney and for city staff because they're certainly very competent and very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will not have public hearing on the subject because it's just discussion. We're not going to make any decision on it.
I just want to know, how does it get back on here when it was already discussed that it wasn't going to pass, and now every
ma'am,
time I turn around, it's in the paper that they're coming back again.
Can you say that your name and your
My name
address?
is Mary Tangway. I live at 13295 West Dixie Highway, and we've already brought this to the whole thing, and it's been canceled, and then they bring it back. They slip it in the paper. We have to be diligent in watching it so we can at least show up so that we can find out what's happening, that they keep on disputing what went down, and now it's all coming back again?
Let me return the mic to the mayor because the mayor is there.
Is it a hot mic? Is it a hot mic?
No,
But
I
the
think
blind leading the blind here. I mean, what are we doing, you know?
What is it?
But I think as a resident, you are allowed to put an item on the agenda the same way the attorney is allowed to put a discussion item on the agenda. I don't think.
Right, but my idea was that I thought that when it was turned down by the top, the next step for them to do was to go to the courts rather than wasting the councilman's time
It's
here
a
every
discussion.
time.
We're not making any decision on it.
I believe procedurally, if I can clarify, they were denied by the Board of Adjustment. It is within their rights to appeal back to the Board of Adjustment, and they're going to exercise that right. There is no discussion to be had tonight by the council, nor any vote.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to let you know how I felt about this. Thank you.
I'm, Mr. Mayor, if you allow me, I'm a little confused. Mr. Attorney, help me. So the item was denied by.
But if I remember correctly, Mr. Attorney stated very clearly, very eloquently, that the standard would be for them to appeal it to the board, and that you would recommend us not to even discuss it.
Yeah, but how did it?
Is it still your?
That is still my recommendation.
Okay.
I mean, we again, as he said, I think, yeah, it's resolved. I mean, we resolved it this afternoon. He still wanted to address you all, but yeah. it's
Oh, so
resolved.
the item already been resolved?
Oh,
Oh,
I
okay,
wasn't
then
here.
okay, thank you. Okay.
So now we in citizen forum.